Hello. Good afternoon, everyone. I know there's still some people in the back finding their seats, but we're going to get started. I'm going to say a few words of introduction and then try and get off the stage for the main event. My name is David Shayevitz. I'm a professor of Jewish history here at Northwestern and director of the Crown Family Center for Jewish and Israel Studies. It is a real pleasure to welcome all of you here today for the latest installment of our annual Renee and Lester Crown Speaker Series. Before I introduce our speaker and say a few words to frame the event, allow me to just say a word or two about the Crown Family Center and to acknowledge some of the people who've made tonight's event possible. The Crown Family Center for Jewish and Israel Studies is an academic hub at Northwestern for undergraduate and graduate education, faculty and student research, and accessible and engaging public programming. Our students, affiliated faculty members, and visiting professors and postdoctoral fellows study, teach, and research Jewish history, Jewish philosophy and thought, Hebrew and Yiddish language and literature, Holocaust studies, and the history, politics, and culture of the State of Israel. Part of what makes the Crown Center unique among the university's many departments and programs and centers is our dedication to communal engagement and to building bridges between the university and the wider public. Tonight's event is one of several really exciting upcoming programs that aim to strengthen this connection. So I'm going to strongly urge everyone to please, at your leisure, check out our website. It's www.jewish-studies.northwestern.edu. And you can find there information about upcoming programs. You can sign up for our mailing list. You can learn about how to follow us on social media. And the website also contains information about how you can partner with us and help support our efforts with a donation of any size. The last few months have been a challenging time on many college campuses, and our educational mission, I think, feels more crucial right now than ever before. And so it's only through the generous support of Northwestern alums and community members that we're able to meet the needs of the moment. Now, tonight it's especially appropriate to publicly acknowledge two particular supporters, namely Renee and Lester Crown, whose visionary leadership and remarkable generosity over the years has transformed Jewish studies at Northwestern from initially a very small program in the 1980s to today a major academic center focused on Jewish and Israel studies with over a dozen affiliated faculty members, a robust group of visitors, an undergraduate major, 2 undergraduate minors, a graduate fellowship and graduate cluster, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. The Crown Speaker Series, which was endowed in their honor, is really a fitting testament to their support of Jewish and Israel studies at the university. Now, tonight, we'll begin with a brief screening and presentation by our guest of honor, Said Kashua, about whom more in just a moment, followed by a conversation that'll be moderated by my colleague, Professor Maayan Hillel. Professor Hillel is an assistant professor of instruction in Jewish studies and assistant director of the Crown Family Center. Her research and teaching focus on Jewish-Arab relations in Mandatory Palestine, the history of modern Israel, and many other subjects, and so she'll be a really wonderful interlocutor for our guest speaker. After their conversation, we'll open up the floor for questions from the audience. And I want to acknowledge, the elephant in the room, which is that it feels like a particularly fraught time right now to be hosting conversations about Israel and Palestine and the issues of identity that are going to come up. It's no secret that Northwestern, like many university campuses, has been the site of difficult conversations about Israel, about Palestine and Palestinian identity, about the upsurge in anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, the boundaries between academic scholarship and culture and political activism. And at the Crown Family Center, we've tried to respond to all of those tensions by doubling down on our educational mission, giving students and the general public access to rigorous scholarship, nuanced critical thinking, sophisticated analysis, rather than just sloganeering. And it's possible that some of us tonight may hear things that we find surprising or disagree with, but I urge us all to respond by embracing the ethos of this university and really any university: collegiality, civil discourse, mutual respect, and intellectual curiosity. Now, it's a real honor for me to introduce our Crown lecturer, Said Kashua. Kashua has been described without hyperbole as the greatest living Hebrew author, and he's contributed to a vast array of genres in modern Israeli culture. He's the author of 4 celebrated novels, each of which has won a staggeringly long list of prestigious prizes that I had to cut out of this in the interest of time, 2 of which have been adapted into major films, and one of those, Let It Be Morning, recently swept the Israeli Academy Awards and was selected for the Cannes Film Festival. His years-long run of weekly columns in Israel's newspaper Haaretz were recently collected into yet another book, and his journalism continues to appear in publications ranging from The New Yorker to The New York Times to The Guardian and many others. As if that weren't enough, Kashua is one of Israel's leading television writers and producers. His series Arab Labor, in particular, revolutionized the depiction of Palestinian citizens of Israel in Israeli popular culture, and his new series Madrasa, about which we'll hear more momentarily, is doing the same. Now, as I said, I've had to cut down the list of accomplishments and accolades dramatically in the interest of time, but I do want to say that especially in light of the moment we live in, the themes that pervade Kashua's work across all of these genres feel really more crucial than ever. The liminal position of Palestinians in Israeli society, the after effects of generational trauma, the tension between home and alienation, between hope and hopelessness. But Kashua engages these heavy themes with his trademark combination of razor-sharp wit, deep empathy, and unceasing humanity. We invited Kashua long before the current tensions in Israel and Gaza were launched in October, but it's hard for us to imagine a better speaker to help us think through these challenging times than him. So please join me in giving a warm welcome to Said Kashua.
I've been told there's a kaftor, okay, that I have to turn it off. Is this? Okay. Hi, good evening. Thank you so very much for, it was wonderful. I'm going just to ruin only your introduction. It's a great honor being here, I think. And it is a little bit tough times, usually. I'm known for being, I don't know, satiristic. I'm not a comedian, but I'm trying to be one, at least. Not a comedian, but I do use a lot of satire and humor in my work. I think, as you will discover tonight, that I'm not funny, actually. I'm funny only when I'm paid to be funny, so it's only my job. No one of my childhood or my family thinks that I'm funny at all. Okay. So I'll be focusing on my recent work, actually, Madrasa. It's about the bilingual school, but I think that it will be a little bit difficult to talk about Madrasa without explaining or showing some of my previous work that led to Madrasa. And I truly hope, as the title said here, that we conclude somehow this event with a kind of hope. Yes, I mean, even now I'm working on tracing hope in Palestinian literature, of the post-Oslo Palestinian literature, and that's a very challenging task to find hope. Yes, but I found wonderful books about cruel hope and hope without optimism. So I think I'm in that stage. Hope as something that I cannot afford not having. Yes, without any rational thought that there is hope in the horizon, sadly. But we will discuss more about hope and literature and cultural struggle. But let me start with a short clip, I thought, from the writer. That was a 10 episodes TV drama comedy that followed 4 seasons of Arab Labor. Mainly it's about a comedian, a Palestinian comedian who was successful and at one point he thought that he cannot afford writing humor any longer. So we'll start with the very first scene from the writer. Was aired in 2015, January 2015 probably, and we'll take it from there. So the writer.
נמצא איתנו היום התסריטאי של סדרת הטלוויזיה עבודה עברית, סופר שחיבר 4 ספרים, ערבי ישראלי, יליד טייבה, והיום הוא ידבר איתנו על העבודה שלו, על הסדרה שכולנו אוהבים, וגם על חייהם של ערבי ארץ ישראל. אז אנחנו מאוד שמחים שהוא נמצא פה איתנו היום. בבקשה.
אז שלום לכולם וצהריים טובים.
רק קצת פחות קרוב למיקרופון, בגלל שהמכשיר השמיע מצפצף.
אז צהריים טובים לכולם.
לא שומעים.
זה עובד? כן. שמי קאטב, אני גר בירושלים, בשכונה חילונית.
לא שומעים.
אני לא יכול...
אולי אנחנו לא צריכים לשמוע, אולי גם זה נצטרך...
לא, אתם צריכים לשמוע אותי, אני מקווה שהמיקרופון, לא יודע, מהטכנאי פה. להתחיל מההתחלה? שמעת? אוקיי, בסדר.
Okay, so thank you. Nothing to do with you, by the way, and not at all. But I chose to start with this, the very first scene of the writer, because I think it was probably trying to deliver a different story or trying to bring my voice to be heard among the Israeli Hebrew audiences and viewers, readers. If I had some kind of, if I thought that I have some kind of a mission, I believe that was always my mission. It's to bring a different voice and to try to bring that voice to be heard in the Israeli society. I think that started, okay, so I was born in Tira in 1975. Tira used to be a small Arab village within Israel. Yes, it's a village that was occupied in 1948, so it became part of Israel, and of course the citizens became Israeli, the residents of Tira became Israeli residents. So I grew up there. It was, I absolutely didn't know that we were poor or that people of Tira are poor. It was a lovely childhood back then in the 70s and the 80s. For me, it was unlike today, of course. I don't know how familiar you are with the realities now within the Palestinian towns and villages inside Israel. Yes, most of the talk today, of course, it's connected, but I'll be focusing on what is called the Palestinian citizen of Israel, just like myself. Yes, some would like to relate to them as Israeli Arabs. But now we prefer the term Israeli Palestinians or Palestinian citizens of Israel. So I was born there, and sadly now it's tragic, just like everywhere. Not to talk about the other tragedies, but one of the tragedies of being a citizen of Israel today is the crime. If you know and you follow the news from Israel, that was actually the headlines. Before the bloody war. Now it was the crime in Palestinian Arabs and towns inside Israel. But when I was born, it was absolutely a safe place. Maybe it's nostalgia speaking, but it was for me. It was a peaceful, nice childhood. I had no idea what Zionism meant or what is the meaning of being Palestinian or Israeli. My parents used to work hard. Education was the major goal. I mean, their kids' education, and honestly, it was very rarely that I met Israelis. I think that I remember that once we joined my father, who worked in Tel Aviv for. He needed to do something at work there, and we stayed in the car, and I remember that we practiced the only sentence back then in Hebrew, which was, Ani lo yodea ivrit, meaning I don't know Hebrew, if anyone would approach us. So I grew up there knowing that we are Arabs, and I didn't know much about Palestine. I will get to that later, honestly, because of the education system. It's we belong to the Israeli Ministry of Education, and the word Palestine was never mentioned in our history books. But I heard stories. I heard stories from my father, but mainly from my grandmother. I always think that it's. I know that doesn't work, but psychologically I feel shocked. And so I heard a lot of stories from my grandmother about the horrible war relating to 1948, of course, and the war that my grandfather was killed in 1948 during the war, and there were heavy battles around Tira back then during the Nakba, or the independence war of Israel. And immediately I remember that story from my grandmother, like at one point, the horrible war. It was always the horrible war. So yeah, I grew up fearing even to hear the word war. I remember my grandmother telling me that there is nothing, that it's beyond imagination, that it's the worst thing that a human being can experience is war. So her husband was killed just in front of her, in front of her eyes, working in the field. And she was a young widow in her 20s with 4 daughters. And my father, who was born in 1947, so he was 1 year old when he lost his father. And I remember during the heavy battles around Tira that she would run away to the mountains in Tulkarem and Kalkilia. It's about 5 minutes with a donkey. Later, of course, became Jordan, yes, became a new territory, later the West Bank. And then I remember that always she cried. The painful part of telling us the story of about the war was when she was told that the war was over, meaning there were agreements and there are new borders, what's called the Green Line. And she said, finally, the war is over, the horrible war is over, and they can go back to my fields and bring some food to my starving kids. And she always cried, telling me that there was an Israeli soldier at the entrance of the village telling her that she no longer owns any fields. And that's the story, actually, of being a Palestinian citizen of Israel. Most of the land was taken by Israelis to serve only the Jewish population in Israel. And of course, we were the lucky ones, according to my grandmother and my father. At least we did not become refugees as the 700,000 refugees back in 1948. Yes, that we will talk about them a little bit. By the way, when we talk about Gaza, we tend sometimes to forget that most of the people in Gaza used to be a very small town back then in 1947, 1948. Most of the population of Gaza are refugees. Of 1948. That's the majority of the population of Gaza. It's refugees. And maybe I'm talking about that because Nakba, although I did not experience that, Nakba is the word for catastrophe for Palestinians. And honestly, it's amazing that I'm diverting a little bit. Because in Israeli, again, I'm generally speaking, or some right-wing Israelis would always, yes, Nakba, Kharta, the life, the Nakba, denying the Nakba. So many stories about not even accepting the idea of this suffering of the Palestinians. Recently, they are talking about a new Nakba for the Palestinian in Gaza with some kind of a pride, which is, I mean, to understand what Nakba means for the Palestinians and to see all these families in Gaza moving again, yes, it's for the second and maybe third time refugees. And talking about another Nakba for the Palestinians, what does that make a Palestinian feel? The fears, the trauma. Yes. But so that was my childhood, and honestly, with all due respect to the stories, I was a good student and a good kid. And at one point in 1989, I think, I went to school in Tira elementary school and then middle school, of course. And at one point, the math teacher talked to my parents and said that the Israelis are establishing and opening a new school in Jerusalem, and they're willing to accept some Arab kids. And they think that my math teacher thought back then that maybe I should take the exams for that special school in Jerusalem. I had no idea what that meant, honestly. It was a competition because we were several kids, so I wanted to be the one who will pass the exams. So I took the exams and I passed them, 3 different exams, to find myself sent to a Jewish boarding school in Jerusalem when I was 15. And that was the first time that I really met Israelis for the first time, truly, to live with Israelis in the same room and to study in Hebrew. I think one of them is here. Oh, yeah, sorry, guy. Yes. So it's not about you. You were good. You were nice. So that was, for me, the first time that I'm experiencing meeting or getting to know the Israeli society, although I am a citizen of Israel. But usually we went to Kfar Saba to buy pizza and falafel because they had, like, back in the 80s, I don't know if any of you were in Israel back then, but they had like a sales for falafel. You buy the pita and you can put as much falafel that you can. So it's an opportunity that my socialist father cannot, of course, miss. So we would do that. But now, by the way, I don't know if exactly now, but most of the people from Kfar Saba would come to Tira to buy labane and hummus and falafel. By the way, we don't make labane. It's something that's produced in the Galilee. We don't have any olive trees in Tira. That's something of the mountains. But still, the Israelis come to Tira on Saturdays to buy labane that we bought from Israeli supermarkets to sell it back to them in a double price. So we're there to satisfy. But it was a shock for me, honestly. I mentioned that in my first novel, Dancing Arabs. It was, and my parents, I know how proud they were because I was accepted to this special school, and my mother did her best. You know, she went to Kalkilia, if you're familiar with that, you know, to buy the best bed sheets for me to take to school and the best clothes that they can afford, that they can take to the new school with the Jews in Jerusalem. But it was a very traumatic 2 weeks back then. I remember that entering that new building. It was the first year of that school, and I remember the smell of that building, the smell that afterwards I realized it's the smell of being a stranger. My father took a day off from his work back then and drove me all the way to Jerusalem. And I knew that next trip was in 2 weeks. I should take the bus for the first time in my life back from Jerusalem to Tira. But it was shocking. I remember my roommates. I was very proud of the bed sheets, and they put them, and they said it's like a bed sheets for arsim because they have some examples of whales on them or something like that. And I remember one of my roommates in the very first day asked me if Arabs do have special pants and clothes factories. And I said, yes, of course. I was so polite. If you want, I can buy you some. I didn't know that they were making fun of my clothes and my pants and my shirts. The first time that I opened my mouth, someone told me that I have the same accent, just like Arafat. And back then also, I tell this story always that I did not shave my mustache because I thought that good students in physics and math should not shave their mustache until very late, which apparently was true. I was good until I shaved it. And also, like in the book Dancing Arabs, I remember that they were playing Beatles, just Beatles, and they said and they said it's a Haposhiyot, and they said something like Hoboshiyot, which is completely mispronouncing the Beatles in Hebrew, and that was my nickname for the next 2 months in school. It was horrific. I absolutely missed home, my grandmother, and I also, my language, my family, my friends. And I would cry, like in the very first days. I will call my parents and cry, and they will promise me it's just the beginning and give it some time and everything will be fine. But it was painful. I don't think that my parents understood how painful it was, because it was very clear for me from the very first beginning that I am primitive. The music that I listened to was primitive, and my language was primitive, and my accent was primitive, and my taste in art was primitive. And I just didn't want to be there, of course. My clothes are primitive. Everything that I resembled was primitive. I'm sure that they did not mean it that way, but at least that was the feeling that I had in the very first days in that wonderful boarding school. And the fact that they're Arab and with all due respect to the Hebrew that you studied in elementary and middle school, there was nothing we didn't talk about at all. The school, about the fact that there are 2 or 3 maybe back then Arab kids that we accepted. It was something that we ignored completely. They need to fit in as is. And that was more Hebrew that I ever studied and heard in my life for the first week. Everything was in Hebrew. The math was in Hebrew. The Bible was in Hebrew. And I didn't know that much of a Hebrew. But the painful thing was that feeling that I'm less than the rest in that very young age. And I remember that the happiest day was when I knew that we started school. We start still schools in Israel at September 1st. And we've been told that for the first time in my life, I learned there's something called Rosh Hashanah, and then we're going home in Rosh Hashanah. I was so happy. I knew that as long as I will tell my parents about my experience in that school, they will never send me back. So it was the happiest Rosh Hashanah ever in my life. Actually, until this very day, I still celebrate Rosh Hashanah. That's my favorite Jewish holiday. And so I packed everything, my bad Arab taste bed sheets and everything, and my Arab clothes or whatever, packed them. And I was following the instructions, a note that my father left me, how to get from the boarding school back to Kfar Saba. It's the nearest Israeli town with bus services, and he will pick me up from there. So I remember, yes, you take bus number 23 from the boarding school, you go to the central station in Jerusalem, you take from there bus number 947 all the way to Tzomet Rahnana. And I remember that journey, that the first time in my life that I'm taking a bus in Jerusalem, the first time actually that I'm leaving the boarding school, which was some kind of a greenhouse in Jerusalem. I took the bus, I arrived. It was a painful journey actually also. Some of the kids, we had next to us a high school called Polanski. I entered the bus. And some of the kids, they immediately knew that I'm an Arab, probably because of my clothes and from the Arab factory or whatever. And they approached me and they started to make some jokes, and I was so nervous that I took the back and they started singing Muhammad Mat and things like that. I was completely shocked. I just went off the bus and took another one to the central bus station, went to the 947, to Kfar Saba, the first time going back home. And at one point, I didn't even know how long it would take to get from Jerusalem to Kfar Saba, yes, if it's half an hour or 1 hour. And the first stop from the bus stopped, I asked, is this the lady next to me? I said, is this Kfar Saba? She said, no, this is Ben Gurion Airport. And then at the stop, there was a soldier who entered the bus, and took him 2 seconds to recognize who's the Arab in the bus. And he approached me and he asked for an ID. I said, I'm only 15, I don't have an ID. I had a school ID. He asked me to get off the bus, and I was terrified because it was the years of the first Intifada, and I saw what soldiers do in the West Bank to Palestinians. I didn't know why I've been asked to accompany this soldier. He asked to bring my bag. He started searching my bag, and meanwhile the bus left me at the entrance of the airport. It's nothing to do with the airport. I just remembered my son. So he was asking me questions. Where are you from? What are you doing in Jerusalem? Meanwhile, he's searching my bag and asking some questions. So I started crying, of course, because I was terrified. I was 15 years old. I didn't know what is happening to me. So the soldier said, relax, calm down. Is it your first time? I said, first time and last time, sir. You will never see me again. I said, relax. This is the airport. The bus the bus have some stops in the airport, but he will pick you up from here. Don't worry. That's the station. You go there and don't worry. The same bus will take you back to Kfar Saba. So I took my bag and waiting for the bus. And then yes, after 5 or 10 minutes or something like that, the same bus arrived again, and they took my bags and went on the bus again. But I couldn't sit to the back in my seat next to that lady. I saw the way that people looked at me. I knew that I'm different. I think that was the first time in my life. To realize. But then I sat on the back seats of the bus. Let's watch a video from Arab Labor. This is the very first scene of Arab Labor. From the first, it's 4 seasons, but this is the first scene of the first episode, the pilot.
من جليت سهل الزفت تخلي الشوطير يسمع شوية عبريت.
بدي غنويتك.
كمان شوي ماما. לא רוצה לשמוע אף מילה עכשיו בערבית, בסדר? רק עברית. ותנסו לחייך. מלמדים אותם לזהות לחץ.
انت الوحيد اللي بلخبط يعني.
يعني את עושה אותי לחץ.
هي كمان بدك تأشم אותי بالبارانويا تبعتك.
התחלת לרתח אותי עכשיו. יא חביבתי, איך שהשוטר מתקרב, תגידי לו בעברית ככה, בלי מבטא. בוקר טוב, אדוני השוטר. טייב יא חביבי. ולנסות לחייך, לחייך. בוקר טוב.
صباح الخير يا بوليس.
ושלום בבקשה. פתח את המיטה. כן, למה לא? בכיף. דומים לי. יכולה להסביר לי איך זה?
خلص كل مرة نفس القصة.
איך הם יודעים לעזאזל? איך? אנחנו נראים אחרת? את כל הכסף שלי אני משקיע בקסטרו ובזרה, אני שומע גלי צה"ל. איך הם יודעים לעזאזל? איך? תצחקי, למה לא? משפט קטן בעברית, בלי מבטא את לא מצליחה להגיד.
خلص ماما خلص حبيبتي. ايش بدك من البنت؟ ايش عملت لك؟ كلهم فحصوا تعداد زهود، بيج ديل.
מה, אנחנו מריחים פחד?
Okay, so I took the bus. So there's a reason for that. So that's Arab Labor. So I took the bus from the airport and all the way to Kfar Saba, and I went off the bus, and my father was waiting for me with a smile. And when I saw him, I truly started to cry. What happened? What happened to you? I said, there was a soldier at the airport. I'm not going back. He stopped me. I said, are you kidding me? You're crying because of the soldier at the entrance of the airport? I said, first of all, I was shocked that he knew that an Arab kid is going to be arrested at the entrance of the airport, and he didn't think that it's something that he needs to mention in his notes. Are you kidding me? You're crying because of the security at the end? When I was a student in Jerusalem and the soldiers did not recognize me, I will stand up very proud of myself and shout, I'm a Palestinian, take me off this bus. And you're crying? Are you sure you're my son? Honestly, I started doubting that back then. Anyway, but I was never brave, I think, like many others, especially like my father. Went back home, went back to school. My parents, of course, my father, I'm going to have a heart attack. Are you going to do that to me? So millions of people want to be in your place. It's the best school in Jerusalem. Give it another try. What are you trying to do to me? And I said, there is no way. I'm not going back to school. And then my father used this sentence that I used, like when finally you were accepted to the best school in Israel, and we thought that you're going to study physics and math with the Israelis, and maybe you will be the first Palestinian to build an atomic bomb that we can destroy this shitty place, and you say no. So that was an argument that I couldn't say no to. But I said, okay, I have some conditions if you want me to go back. So what are your conditions? Go to Kfar Saba and get me some Jewish clothes. I don't know what that means, but make sure that it's from a Jewish clothes factory. And also I need a Walkman, it's called, for probably all of us will know what is a Walkman is, with headphones. And I said, of course. I shaved my mustache a little bit, and my father came back from Kfar Saba with the new clothes, and they looked at the Walkman, and it says Iowa, which is a word in Arabic, and they started crying that he's again buying me something Arab. But later I discovered actually that it is not bad at all. So I remember taking the bus again, the same thing. You have to take the same journey, and same thing from Kfar Saba to Jerusalem. You go through the soldier at the airport, and I had, like, with my new Jewish factory clothes, I don't know, even it's, I think, maybe more expensive or something like that, because Kalkilia was not known for the fashion, I don't know, but it was, yeah, Mitav of not Kalkilia. Anyway, so I was sitting in the bus, and I remember one of the first books, Kol HaChaim Lefanav, was the first book that we were asked to read, Emile Ajar, and then the next book, of course I didn't even try. That was more Hebrew than ever. The next book was the Catcher in the Rye in Hebrew. So I didn't even try it, but I had the book in my backpack, so I just opened it. I was not even reading, with the headphones, no music, because I know that music is primitive, so it's just the Walkman, headphones, and just a Hebrew book. And I think that the soldier, again, we stopped. I think he recognized me, but like, dude, just for the efforts, I'm gonna stay this time. But I think a little bit like Amjad here, and that's the reason that I wanted to show it. It's because I knew that in order to survive in Jerusalem for the next, not only 3 years later in Hebrew University, I have to pass as Israeli. I knew that I cannot afford to be recognized as an Arab, as Palestinian, as a threat in Israel. And since then, it was, of course, language. By the way, I did read The Catcher in the Rye in Hebrew. That was the first novel that I read in Hebrew. So I knew that I have to change myself. I have to assimilate. I have to find ways not to be recognized as the primitive, poor Arab kid. And I knew in school that I need to work very hard on my language. More than anything, more than math or physics or anything like that, my purpose, my goal there is to know more literature than the Israelis, to understand their taste, yes, their Western, generally speaking, Western taste in music and in art, and to know Hebrew very well, and to read literature. And I think it was then that I was interested for the first time in writing. And only in that high school also I started to hear from teachers and students that I'm very funny. And only then I thought that I'm using humor, first of all, very much, to make jokes on myself. I'm making fun of myself in order to, to tell them that I know what you think about me. So it was some kind of like, it was humor for me back in the high school until today, I guess, maybe less. It was a tool to survive, some kind of please don't hate me, I can tell you a joke. So then, yes, it was very much a tool that I used to fit in. To not to seem as some kind of a threat, to feel that I belong, making fun of myself, of being Arab, of being Palestinian. But I hope that I developed that also in order to maybe to make a joke at first, to make you listen to me, and then and then maybe tell you a story that can make you cry. So basically, after high school, honestly, it's 3 years of Hebrew University, and when I was 21, I started working for Kol Hayir newspaper in 1996. So it used to be a wonderful local newspaper in Jerusalem, and since then I write in Hebrew, as mentioned here, followed by several novels. But then the question of the language, right? Hebrew became my best language. Actually, a good friend of mine now asked me, in what language should I talk to you now? And I said, honestly, now there are 3 languages that I don't speak very well. Sometimes it feels in order to deliver an idea or to write a short story, I need 3 languages to express myself, to try to express myself properly. And the language, as you know, language, of course, especially in the context of the Palestinian-Israeli. It's especially also when we talk about the Palestinians who remained in Israel, the Palestinian citizens of Israel, one of their main few tools that they have to protect their identity, yes? I'm not going to talk about, maybe briefly, about the connection between nationalism and language, right? The idea of the mother tongue, yes, it started with the German romantic idea, yes, and philosophy of the natural situation is to have one language, and nationalism and language, and the mother tongue and language, and the nation as the mother, right? Forgetting actually that the multilingualism and bilingualism was the norm before this idea of nationalism and one language, and nationality based on language. I remember very well Amos Oz, a wonderful Israeli writer, once said that Hebrew, or the modern Hebrew language, was the biggest miracle of Zionism. The rebirth of the nation by the rebirth of the Hebrew language, right? And especially actually in the context of Israel, Palestine, and the Hebrew. Many scholars would argue that the state of Israel was first created in language and in books before the Israelis had a land. So it's a state that was established first in books. So sometimes in Arabic we say Am al-Sefer, actually Ahl al-Kitab in Arabic. I always thought it's the people of the Bible, Ahl al-Kitab. And then in Hebrew, yes, Am al-Sefer, the people of the book. It is like a people that was created by the book before the state. I'm sure that I'm completely wrong with that, but that was my interpretation of this idea. The same thing, of course, with the Palestinian, how to protect your language, your identity through language. Yes, so you can be easily accused sometimes for only the use of the Hebrew. I was not the first Palestinian to write in Hebrew, of course. There were many, but the most known is the wonderful Anton Shammas with Arabesque in 1986. And also, I think I know that he moved from Israel and teaches and lives in Michigan. So there was that dilemma of the language. Honestly, back then I didn't think much about it. Publishing my first articles in Kol Hayir newspaper and later in the novels. This is the language that I feel comfortable. This is the only language that I can use to tell a story. But later on, of course, all these thoughts and accusations and re-examining and rethinking the language were very much painful. Sometimes it's easier to write for TV because we can use both languages. You can even bilingual, you write the dialogues in Hebrew and Arabic, and the Arab characters, unlike the novels, will speak in Arabic, and the Israeli Hebrew characters will use Hebrew, of course. But in novels, it's a different matter and different issue. So I will show a little bit from the writer regarding the language, It is actually based on a true story, not one-to-one, but the katib. Katib in Arabic actually means writer. There is no Arab name that is katib. Katib means the writer. That he's invited to a literary festival in Italy, and it's Mediterranean in a small town in south of Italy, and he meets there many Arab writers coming from different Arab states, and there's the translator, and he's coming as the Israeli. So there's the cultural attaché, the Israeli cultural attaché, waiting for him in that town, and he's trying to find his way between his Arabness, Palestinianness among the other writers, especially one Palestinian translator, and the Israeli attaché who is there with the translator to translate from the Hebrew, because my books and Katib's books are written originally in the Hebrew. So that was the dilemma that he's facing between who is going to translate me in my event. So we'll watch a short clip from the writer.
يعني من نفس الحضارة تقريبا.
وانت صوتك
تسلم شكرا. أثرت شوي. يعني كيف حسيت؟
البيرة بدها حمام. ياسمينة الترجمة كانت
شكرا
رائعة.
كثير. اسمعوا، عندي خبر كثير مهم أقرأ لكم إياه. إن هذا الكاتب هو عبد خادم لأسياده، ينظف ضمائرهم ويكتب ما يطيب لأذانهم. هذا الكاتب الذي تخلى عن لغته الأم واعتنق لغتهم، لغة العدو المحتل الذي يغتصب يوميا ثقافته وهويته. إن ما يمثله الكاتب بأسرلته لخطر كبير على شبابنا المتمسك بكرامته بهويته وبوطنيته.
بكفي ياسمين، خلص.
شو عرفك أي صحفي موجود محبط عم بزاود ضيق الأفق مش ناقصنا؟ ما أنت عارفة.
بتعرفي شو، عن جد ممكن يكون هذا الصحفي بالغ، بس عندي سؤال واحد أوجهه لكاتب. أنت فلسطيني ولا إسرائيلي؟
بكفي ياسمين، أنت ما بتفهم قديش المسألة معقدة بالنسبة لفلسطينية 48. أنت ما بتعرف الوضع هناك، خلاص.
سؤال بسيط، عربي ولا إسرائيلي؟
أنا ما اخترت، بس أنا عربي فلسطيني ساكن بدولة إسرائيل.
دولة إسرائيل كتير حلو. وقول لي وحياتك، دولتك هاي بنظرك هي دولة شرعية؟
هاي الدولة بتعمل كتير أشياء غير
قول ليش بتعمل وبتعملش، جاوبني. الدولة هاي إلها حق الوجود؟
أنا بقرأ كتير أشياء من حكومة كيف تتصرف.
إلها حق الوجود ولا لا؟ جاوبني، سهل الموضوع، ليش بتجاوبش؟
ياسمين بكفي، خلص.
حلو هيك يعني.
So yes, that's yes. I think that writers need to write, not talk. Some example of about identity and language and what are you and what is the meaning of being a Palestinian and citizen of Israel. And honestly, the writer was we started shooting the writer. I think it was June 2014. It was the summer that my wife and me decided that we are leaving Jerusalem for good. We lived in Jerusalem just as just like in the Arab labor and a lot of my autobiographical writing. At one point, we moved from East Jerusalem to live in a nice Ashkenazi, generally speaking, neighborhood. Ashkenazi means white neighborhood in Jerusalem. Our kids went to the bilingual school. Our youngest actually went to the it's called Gan Parparim. This is the most difficult, one of the most difficult words to pronounce in Arabic. I think that the border police in Israel, they tell him if you don't know if it's an Arab or something, ask him to say Parparim 3 times and you'll find his identity. This kid, I love him so much, but he never spoke one sentence in Arabic. He switched from the Hebrew when we moved. He was 3. And there was Abba, and I remember him shouting in Hebrew, Abba, ma nahnu osim b'Champaign. Daddy, what are we doing in Champaign? Meaning Champaign, Illinois. And honestly, I had no good answer back then to him. But he switched to Daddy, what are we doing in Champaign? And now what are we doing in Boston? But I left in the middle of shooting, but also, I don't know, now it looks like a very long history since 2014, but it was another very bloody summer, and I couldn't take it. I completely collapsed. When I decided to move, the Borrowed Identity was supposed to be actually based on the first novel called Dancing Arabs, but the producers thought back then that it's a bad name to give a movie in such very horrific political situation, if you remember. Yes, another war, another Gaza with 2,500 Palestinians and more than 50 Israelis were killed following a kidnapping of 3 Israeli teenagers. And then at one point, a Palestinian teenager was kidnapped and burned alive in Jerusalem, and that's when I thought that I cannot continue my life as it is. We lived in Western Jerusalem. I honestly raised my kids. They're the perfect bilinguals, except from the third one. I always make this joke that we are waiting for his bar mitzvah to tell him that he's a Muslim. But it was horrific, and I honestly could not stay there. Everything that people from both sides, the Israelis, this is not your natural place, and the Palestinian, you will see, you will regret it, you will never be accepted. The idea of sending the kids to the bilingual school in Jerusalem, the idea of finding a common language between Israelis and Palestinian, all that hope just collapsed. And I saw only darkness back then, thinking that it was the most horrific times that one can experience. So we moved to Urbana-Champaign when we were shooting The Writer, trying to find a different path. It was also about language, about living together, about a possibility of a better future, about if it's even meaningful to continue addressing Israelis. I believe when I left, my column in Haaretz was at least among the most read columns. Yes, as I mentioned, Dancing Arabs, the movie, or Borrowed Identity, was supposed to be the opening night of the Jerusalem Film Festival. I was just finishing editing the story, the scripts for second season of Shtisel, and I just left all that and moved to the United States, of course, where I live now. So it was complete escapism, and it's not a pleasant feeling at all, because the only reason that I'm here is the political reason. It is this fear that I cannot promise my kids a better future, and maybe bringing them here and trying to make Americans as much as possible out of them will guarantee a better future for my kids. I have no idea if that was the right move or not. I think that they are happier, I hope. But all these fears of leaving the country, leaving the land, leaving the nation is very painful. It took me some time to rethink about the use of the language and to study a lot, actually, to be able to get back to writing. And this time, the wonderful project, I wanted to address kids. And when I heard that the CAN Kids, it's the educational channel for kids in Israel, are looking for a bilingual project, I applied, and luckily madrasa, which means in Arabic midrasha, but madrasa means school that deals with the bilingual school in Jerusalem, where my kids used to go, was accepted, and 20 episodes of madrasa premiered in January 2023. I was so happy when they just recently, the producers and the network, asked to renew it for a second season because it is more important than ever. I try to suggest some kind of a new imaginary. Again, not out of, it's because of you cannot truly lose hope, and because we cannot afford any other situation but trying to find a language that you understand the suffering of the other, that Palestinians and Israelis will realize that without accepting the suffering of the other, I mean, without talking, without finding the people who are ready to talk and recognize and acknowledge the suffering and the history and the culture of the other, probably we don't have any future, both Israelis and Palestinians, in that land. So we'll start I'll start with an example from madrasa, which is called actually a partition plan. It was tough. I had to negotiate it. That was the most negotiated scene in the series. Yes, with the producer executives from the public TV. But let's start with the madrasa partition plan.
ايه هلا افتحوا منيح بينكم جاي اشي جديد كائن من سوق خير مقيع بلحن فريد وكلماتنا مش اكبر من سيبي ولا فرحة عيد كذا עוד לא שמעתם פה גם לא קרוב אקיד
عايشين بنفس المحل المعسى החיים האלה הם שיעור מדרסה עובדים את אותו ריקוד על קו התפר תלעו את דפאתם נעשה לכם בית ספר
ماما بنفع يجي مكان عندنا اليوم؟
لا ماما حبيبي اليوم أنا مشغولة ولازم بعد الظهر أخذك عند الحلاق.
طب بكرة؟
بعرف إيش بنشوف.
يا متان هون.
حالك تمام؟
متان استنى.
الناراتيف يعني الرواية، هو مش بس حالة قصة يعني خيالية كانت أو واقعية، إنما اعتقادات سياسية واجتماعية اللي هي بتأثر على كل نواحي المجتمع.
נרטיב מהבחינה הזו הוא מעין סיפור לאומי. סיפור שהופך להיות חלק מהזיכרון הקולקטיבי של קבוצה מסוימת.
هاي الروايات أو الناراتيفز عندها قوة هائلة بتشكيل هويتنا القومية، اللي هي زي ما حكينا جزء كتير مهم من هويتنا الشخصية.
אוקיי, אז בשיעור הבא שלנו אנחנו نעסוק באחת הפרשיות היותר משמעותיות שלנו בהיסטוריה כאן בארץ.
درسنا الجاي رح يكون عن قرار التقسيم. رح نحكي عن الخطة بسياقها التاريخي، الأبعاد تبعتها، الاختلافات، كيف الفلسطينيين والإسرائيليين بنظروا على الإشي بطريقة جدا مختلفة واستعملوا نفس خطة قرار التقسيم لبناء رواية تاريخية مختلفة كتير.
דובר אולי באחד השיעורים היותר רגישים וחשובים שלנו כאן בסמסטר הזה, אז תבואו מחר מוכנים לדיון, אוקיי?
منار عليها 10 نقط من العلامة النهائية.
ما؟ רק בגלל מנר? לא פייר.
طبعا مش فير. نحكي على قرار التقسيم، يعني كيف بده يكون فير.
את רוצה להגיד לי שאתם לא מצטערים היום שלא קיבלתם אז את ההצעה?
תגיד, מה אתה צוחק עכשיו? מה אתה צוחק? איך אתה יכול להגיד דבר כזה בכלל?
לובנא.
ברור.
خلوا هاي النقاشات لبكرة، أوكي؟
شو بدك منها يعني؟ ما هي بتلبس زيها زي باقي بنات المدرسة.
أنا بهمنيش شو بيلبسوا باقي بنات المدرسة، أنا اللي بهمني إنه أنا وأنت لما كنا بالمدرسة ما حدا كان يلبس هيك.
يا جميل، إيش بدك مني يعني إسا؟
مش أنت أمها وهي بنتك؟ احكي معها.
مش هي بنتها وأنت أبوها، وأنت اللي مضايق مش أنا، فأنت احكي معها.
إيش يعني بدك أنا اللي؟
بعرفش، بس إذا هالقد الجيران وحكي جيران همك، أكيد راح تلاقي طريقة تحكي معها.
تعرفي شو؟ طيب، ولا يهمك، أنا بحكي معها. أكيد راح تتقبل هذا الموجود، عندنا مجتمع محافظ، أكيد راح تتفهم.
مرحبا.
أهلا منار.
هلا حبيبتي، كيفك؟
تمام. أعطونا وظيفة كبيرة لبكرة ولازم الأهل يساعدوا فيها. إيش فيه؟
جميل.
ولا شيء. كيف ايش اي وظيفه عليكي؟
تاريخ عن قرار التقسيم.
היי, סליחה, חלתי שאני מסכה ועזבת.
חיכיתי שתגיעי כדי שאני אגיד לך שנמאס לי ואני עוזב.
אמא שלי שיגעה אותי. אם היית נפגשת בספרייה, כמה זמן תהיי בספרייה? יואו.
כן. גם אמא שלי. חושבת שאני לומד עם משתי להיסטוריה עכשיו.
וואי, נכון, יש את הדיון הזה, על מה זה היה?
תוכנית חלוקה.
נכון. אתה רואה? חבל שלא הסכמתם לחלוקה. ככה כל אחד מאיתנו היה במדינה אחרת, ולא היה צורך בדו-לשוני.
כן. לפחות אז לא היינו צריכים לשקר ולהתחבא כל הזמן.
אני אמרתי את זה בצחוק, אתה יודע.
גם אני. בצחוק. פשוט... אנחנו מתנהגים כמו שני גנבים, וזה לא הכי נעים בעולם.
וזה כן נעים. תגיד, היית חותם על תוכנית החלוקה, נגיד, אם היית המופתי?
מה? זה לא פייר לשאול אותי את זה ככה באמצע חיבוק
היו צריכים להציע את תוכנית החיבוקים.
חבק ומשול.
اسمعي ماما حبيبتي، هي هذا كل اسم خطة التقسيم إشي بخربط في الآخر، ولا في تقسيم ولا عبالة. تعرف شو كل القصة؟
היהודים, אפילו שזה היה קשה להם, היו מוכנים להתפשר ולקבל את הצעת האו"ם.
باخذوا أراضي من الفلسطينيين وبعطوها لليهود، هي كل القصة. بشوف هيك.
הם היו פרגמטיים, הם רק רצו להקים מדינה.
וערבים.
הם עשו את הטעות של החיים שלהם. הם הכי חשוב להם כבוד.
נו, באמת. הם לא ידעו לקרוא את המפה הפוליטית, נכון. הם לא הבינו את יחסי הכוחות הבינלאומיים.
بس بالنهاية اتضح إنه رفض قرار التقسيم كان غلطة صح؟ يمكن لو كانوا يعرفوا شو اللي بده يصير بس ما كانوش يعرفوا.
כן, הם היו בטוחים שאחרי שהבריטים יצאו מכאן, הם ישחטו את היהודים אחד-אחד.
נו, אלון, באמת.
גם זה לא נכון?
تخيلي حدا يجيكي على بيتك وبده ياخذ نص بيتك، تقبلي؟ لا، بس لو كنت تعرفي إذا ما انتهينش نص البيت رح ياخذوا البيت كله ويطردوكي منه.
הערבים פשוט לא הבינו שלעם היהודי אין אף מולדת אחרת.
אנחנו היינו מוכנים להתפשר, והם העדיפו מלחמה, ואכלו אותה. מישהו רוצה עוגה?
فهذا كان جزء من الاستعمار الأوروبي. الإنجليزي سلموهن كل شيء، أعطوهن كل شيء قبل ما يطلعوا من البلاد.
أنا ضد التقسيم، قصدي لغاية اليوم أنا ضد التقسيم.
كمان الضفة وغزة؟
كل محل.
اليوم مش مستعدين يقسموا، ليه؟ لأنهم قوايا مش مستعدين يتنازلوا ولا عن شبر.
עד היום הם לא מוכנים לקבל את החלוקה. ברק הציע להם חלוקה הוגנת, כולל ירושלים המזרחית, והם סירבו.
זה נראה לך חלוקה הוגנת?
خسارة إنهم ما قسموا. كان بيكون نص مال الشرطات ونص الطوارئ.
ايه؟
ولا شيء. بس بقولي مع قرار التقسيم.
إذا هيك ليش بعتونا على المدرسة الثنائية اللغة؟
אנחנו עד היום מנסים להגיע להבנה. עד מתי تימשך המלחמה הזאת?
عشان نتعلم نعيش، يعني إذا مش بالمدرسة بالجامعة، إذا مش بالجامعة بالشغل، مثلا بالمستشفى تفضل شيء شغال 100%. هيك المفروض يكون في المحل.
Okay. I know that I'm running out of time, but I need a small clip from Madrasa. Because yes, it is about optimism. And actually the bilingual school, if you heard back in the news, actually 2014, it was also burned, the school, by extreme right-wing Israelis. And then the whole community came together to rebuild it. And it was one of the powerful moments, I think, for the community back then. But it was not always easy. Let's see this clip from actually that the parents of both Shira and Khalid meet for the first time. And the kids, of course, before they know that they have a friendship that they are hiding. This is actually, that clip was from episode 10, this is from 8.
חלד בחור מהמם, באמת. אני קצת חוששת שהם עלולים להיפגע.
להיפגע ממה?
شوي حكينا.
חסה שו חכינה. ממה יש להם להיפגע, דורית?
ממה, ריאם, באמת. עם כל הכבוד לדעות שלנו, פה אנחנו... בואו לא נשכח באיזה מציאות פוליטית אנחנו חיים.
יש עוד סכין?
בואי.
בגיל הזה את רוצה לצאת עם החבר שלך? את רוצה שיכיר את המשפחה, את טיולים, זה חגים, זה כבר לא הבועה הזאת של בית ספר.
וזה יבייש אותך?
לא.
אם הבת שלך מציגה בפני המשפחה בחור ערבי?
לא יבייש, לא, אבל באמת, חאלד הוא מותק של בחור.
כן, מותק שהיא מביישת את הילדה שלך, הבנתי.
לא, חבר'ה, אתם לא חושבים שאתם מגזימים קצת?
לגמרי, נו, זה סך הכל ילדים בתיכון.
תודה.
ומה יהיה אחרי תיכון?
לכי תדעי, אלוהים גדול אחרי תיכון. שירה בטח תלך לצבא. אני לא יודע מה התוכניות של חאלד, בטח מה, אוניברסיטה, אני מתאר לעצמי.
הבנתי. אז כל עוד זה בתיכון, בתור משחק ילדים זה סבבה, כי זה הולך להסתיים.
אני רק מתאר לעצמי, מה, כמה חברויות ממשיכות אחרי תיכון?
ומה אם אחרי התיכון הבת שלך תבוא ותגיד לך, יש לי חבר ערבי, או רוצה להתחתן עם בחור ערבי, מה תגיד?
לא יודע, אני לא באמת חשבתי על זה, לא לעומק, לא התעמקתי במה יהיה אחר כך.
כן, ריאן, זאת תהיה בעיה, אוקיי? למה להתאמן? אנחנו לא חיים בעולם אידיאלי, מצב מורכב ומסובך, ולא צריך לעשות אותו עוד יותר קשה ועוד יותר מסובך. מה לעשות?
אני לא מבינה, למה את שולחת את הילדה שלך ללמוד בבית ספר מעורב אם זה מבייש אותך שיש לה חבר ערבי?
אוקיי, אז אני עכשיו אשמה שאני שולחת את הבת שלי כדי לחנך אותה על ערכים של דו-קיום.
עד גבול מסוים הדו-קיום שלך, נכון?
אני לא... חבר'ה, למה להרוס יין כזה טוב?
לגמרי,
יום הולדת שלה,
יין מצוין.
כן, ריאן, אני דואגת לילדה שלי, בסדר? אני דואגת ואני מפחדת שהיא תיפגע.
מעולה, וגם אני דואגת לילד שלי ולא רוצה שהוא יסתובב עם אנשים שעלולים לפגוע.
סליחה.
חאלד.
מה?
אתה מוכן בבקשה להירגע?
אני אנסה.
זה מלחיץ אותי.
סליחה.
בעצמנו, זה מספור לי.
يلا شوي بكون جاهز.
بعدين אני אשכח.
אוקיי, זהו? אוקיי. Thank you so much. I hope that the message of new generation, next generation, although it ends up, it's fine. We'll come to a better understanding based on equality and respect and acknowledgement. I think I completely ran out of time, so I will conclude with thank you. And if you have any questions, I'm sure that many of the topics we'll continue discussing soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Saad, for captivating, moving talk. It was really hopeful, which is very much needed these days. So before we open the floor to questions from the audience, I would like to ask you a few questions, which I've brought, so if you don't mind. So one notable aspect of your writing is your uncompromising criticism toward both sides, Jews and Palestinians. You make no concessions to anyone. And it seems that you don't subject your criticism or satire to political correctness or symmetry. Yet, when I read your text or watch your series, I feel that your criticism also has a profound compassion for both sides. Even when you criticize or ridicule your characters, you have compassion for them. And this ability stands out as something unique and perhaps rare in Israeli public discourse, especially considering that each community is immersed in empathy for its own side, its own point of view, its own historical narrative. So can you tell us, how do you do it? How can one nurture this freedom of thought, or even what I see as spiritual generosity?
Thank you so much. I think it was a mistake, and I will correct that. I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm mainly criticizing myself, but it's it is very difficult to talk about that now. First of all, let's remember that I left because of political reasons, despair. So it's not compassion. Probably I'm basing that on the friendships and knowing, and again knowing the two societies. But what societies do I know? To be honest, it's my friends. It's the people who usually, I hope, share some of the, if it's legitimate to call it, some universal human basic values. That would be the minimum. So probably that. Basing that on, yes, my experience and on my friends and truly, maybe because of always I thought my goal was to offer some kind of, naive as it may be, some kind of a possible future that the Palestinians and also the Israelis can live in dignity and respect and in freedom mainly. It's not happening. Yeah.
Thank you. So your renowned TV series, among of them, Arab Labor and Madrasa, skillfully navigate the daily Jewish-Arab encounter in Israel through humor and satire, offering an entertaining and at the same time digestible glimpse into the life of Arab Palestinian citizens. So do you see humor and satire as essential and maybe the only tools for critically addressing Jewish-Arab relations in primetime television, or are there alternative approaches you find equally effective?
I don't think that culture is effective. I'm so sorry to say that. Not in such days. But it's the minimum that I can do. I can talk about the importance maybe of cultural discourse, but not in such a situation. But again, it took me a while to understand that yes, it's meaningless and it doesn't help at all. So I take no responsibility on the political development since I started working. But it's the only thing that I can do. And it took me a while to realize that and to try Madrasa. And again, I'm ready to maybe to try again. Not because I think that it might change anything, not at all. It's just I feel it's the minimal responsibility that the only thing that I can do. So it's better than doing nothing. But it's not, the satire, I used it again, actually I have some sentences, yes, some would, I think it was, I always say Oscar Wilde, but maybe it's Bernard Shaw also said that if you want to tell people the truth, you better make them laugh, otherwise they will kill you. So, and also some others will say that the humor is the weapon of the weak. And I always thought that is a good tool to use in order to make the Israelis, or force the Israelis to listen to what you have to say. But at one point also thought that it's a double-edged sword to talk about humor as the weapon of the weak. It means actually that I accept the position of being the weak. And that's also a very humiliating condition. I work within Israeli productions. I have wonderful friends and colleagues, and I'm so proud of Madrasa and Arab Labor and the writer. And I think that all people involved in this project truly wanted the best. But for example, the partition plan, but I know how to negotiate it already. So I knew that it's going to be a problem. But we had like a meeting, I don't know, probably Bibi was there in that meeting to approve some sentences and cut others and negotiated and what.
But what were the challenges? What was the really the main issues?
To be balanced. What are you talking about? Colonialism. You're mentioning colonialism. I said that's part of the Palestinian narrative. It needs to be balanced. Some of the sentences were cut out, which is in the Palestinian tradition. For example, this example of one of the mothers says to her sons that from the Palestinian point of view, they bring the example of Shlomo HaMelech, yes, and the two mothers coming and we'll cut the baby in half, you take one, and who was the one who refused to cut the baby in half? So it was the real mother. So that's something that said, no way, like that's not going to pass. And then we had a big meeting. The same thing also with Arab labor. I had more clips from the Independence Nakba Day. I remember conversations with the producer, with not the producers. The producers always had my back. It's called Djibouti. They supported me. But from the network, you are violating the contract that you have with the viewers. This is too much. It's too radical. It's too political. Where's the humor in it? We want more humor. So it's not an easy. It's a negotiating. It's a struggle to bring. But again, all of the people, they're wonderful people, and they know that they wanted the best from the show, and they're very proud with the outcome of the show. Me too. But it's a struggle. Almost each sentence, but many of the sentences. And I use, even in the partition plan, a lot of humor with one of the Arab girls with her short pants and the father.
I remember.
Yes, and so you always mix it with the sadness, with a lot of jokes and humor. If I believe that it's efficient to achieve political goals? No. I think for that you need politicians, you need money, you need international law, you need armies, and you need leaders that we don't have. Responsible leaders, I mean.
So one more question, and then I'll let the audience to ask you a few questions. So as we have heard today, and I guess as we all know, the relationship between Jews and Arabs in Israel is highly complicated. As we know, it encompasses bloody history, prejudice, language barrier, mutual suspicion, unequal power relations, racism, and more. And given that, the pursuit of a shared life is undeniably tough, demanding. It often comes at a personal and social cost. And one of the rare avenues that continue to bravely insist on meeting and getting to know the other is bilingual education, as we saw in madrasa, where Jews and Arabs study side by side in a multicultural environment in both languages, Arabic and Hebrew. And your portrayal of bilingual education in Israeli prime time boldly confront the complexities, and as you just said, of this avenue. So I came across a statement attributing the motivation for creating this series to a desire, I'm quoting, to break the walls of separation, racism, and fear of the other, and to present the possibility of a better future. So in light of recent events, particularly post-October 7 and nearly 4 months of war in Gaza, do you believe it is still possible?
Yes. I mean, I have to believe it's possible. I don't see any reason. For now, I'm not thinking about how to, for now the main concern is stop the killing in masses, stop the killing, ceasefire. That's the main goal now, stop the starvation. And then we will have to find a way to negotiate. And we cannot be led by extremists. And the problem is in 2014 and back also in 2000, there was no hope offered to the Palestinians. There was no political horizon at all, nothing. And sometimes, they relate to Ben Gurion the saying that he said about the Palestinian refugees, that the old will die and the young will forget. But the young cannot forget the young cannot forget because the Nakba is continuous. And how can you forget if you live in the West Bank or a refugee camp in Lebanon or whatever, and even in Tira in Israel? You see that it's continuous. What are you going to forget? And the thing is, I think that Ben Gurion was saying more that the Palestinians will forget the future, forget the possibility of a better future. I think that of course, the recent government and many others is to eliminate any possibility of better future for the Palestinians. It's to kill that hope that your life can be better one day, especially with the settlements. That's the source of the main evil, as I see it there. So if you don't have a horizon, if you don't have ability to imagine a better future or have hope, of course it's not going to end anytime soon, because and then that's maybe the duty. It is too soon to suggest that to find a path for communication and against separation. Now, of course, yes, with the immediate call is to save lives or stop the killing, but there is no other option if the Palestinians and the Israelis want to share that land. The idea of the partition plan, for now, it seems like, yes, that the Israelis want the Palestinians to accept Zionism and the fact that land was promised for the Israelis, and from the other side, the Palestinians are expecting Israelis to accept that Israel is a colonist project. So these two thoughts cannot bring any hope for a better future. So I don't see any other alternative. Maybe it's easy because now I'm in Boston to talk about it, but I think that's, yes, if the two nations want to survive, because Israel can forget about the idea that they can have peace without guaranteeing freedom for the Palestinians. The Palestinian people are not going to forget. No one is going to forget. Actually, some books and in some writings, it's melancholy when under occupation. It's not a melancholy that you work through and you mourn the loss or anything like that. The opposite is true. You are not forgetting, and you will always fight. And melancholy can lead to suicide and can lead to killing and can lead both nations to, I don't know if we can talk about darker places, but my experience, I thought in 2014 that was the lowest point that we can reach, but sadly,
obviously it was
we'll
not.
see. But I hope somehow the reasonable voices from both sides, that in the Palestinian side were silenced. People who believed in living together and finding a solution were humiliated by settlers, by government, and the extremists were the one to prove that they were right. That's the tragedy. We are led by extremists from both sides, and that needs to end. And now it needs to end. And I hope that somehow the voices of reason, of minimal justice, of humanity from both sides will somehow prevail and somehow find a way to think for a better future for our kids.
Inshallah.
Amen.
Okay, we have 10 minutes, 15 minutes for questions, so please.
I can also project if that helps, but thank you.
First and foremost, thank you very much for coming to Chicago and for gracing us with your presence here. I want to say I'm a Palestinian American, and it was because of Arab labor that I went to pursue study in Hebrew because of your show. Now, I'm a musician, and I've been...
I wrote it for Israelis, not for Palestinians.
It wouldn't be a comedy show without that. I have to, we have to make the document, right? And because of your show, I just wanted to say thank you first and foremost. that it was one of the things that really pushed me. And of course, I got very deep into more Jewish culture and learning the music and the culture from the Andalusia and so on. But, and in fact, I told many of my friends in Nasra and Tarshiha and Haifa, I was like, you guys know the show Avodah Arabit, right? And I said, no. I said, you have to watch this. So one of my friends came back and he was just over the moon. Like he said, this is exactly how my life was in Nazareth. And what I wanted to get across then, though, is I thought, okay, well, I know my friends who are Palestinian Israeli citizens, or Palestinians of Israeli citizenship. And me just learning Hebrew for the West Bank, where my family is from Jerusalem and Ramallah, just learning Hebrew can sometimes come across as even tatbi'a, as they say, normalization. Yeah. For me, language is actually the key. Learning the language of another is learning their culture and learning who they are. And how do I convince, though, and this is a difficult question, I think, but how do I show that folks that living in the West Bank, Palestinians living in the West Bank, that a show like this can bring hope, that the learning of two languages and learning about the other can bring hope, without being accused, and I'm sure you yourself have probably suffered from the same thing, of normalization, or what are you trying to do, forget your history? So how do you have any suggestion about that? Because I'm very deep into Jewish culture, I'm very deep into Jewish history, to the music as my own as well. I grew up playing Palestinian music, Arab music, and all of this. So I'm just very curious, what is your advice into trying to avoid this accusation so that we can get past it? That was my question.
Thank you so much, first of all. I mean, now it's, of course, the political climate right now, we cannot truly, again, discuss any hope or watch TV in order to learn more or anything like that. Now the major concern is to stop the killing. That should be the situation. And of course, it's different conditions, different situations, being in the West Bank under immediate occupation and being in the Palestinian state of Israel, not to talk about Gaza. So there are different positions, of course, all connected and all part of the Palestinian cause, but it's different realities in different places. When it comes to language, of course, it's again the common language, or to find a language, and it was never separated as it is today. Yes, many. The majority of the Israelis came from Arab-speaking countries and Muslim countries, and of course the status of the Arabic among the Jews and in Israel itself was completely destroyed. Yes, and even now, sadly, most of the Israelis who study Arabic do that for military reasons, to go to the intelligence, to the units. There's a wonderful book. Many books by Yehuda Shenhav, and there was now a recent book by Yoni Mendel, a wonderful book about the militarization of the Arabic language in the Israeli society. It became a language even in high school. I took Arabic. That was my only A+ in Jewish school. It was taking Arabic for Israelis, and it was Jewish Israelis. I mean, it was really about like falling airplanes and guns, and then I realized it's preparing people for military. So that's sad. So language, how do you study language? Is it about culture and understanding and for daily life, or it's a prism of militarism and how you use language for intelligence? So that's a sad story. Many Palestinians, the best way, if you want to, as a Palestinian, to study Hebrew, get yourself in jail for a couple of years, and most of the Palestinian leaders study Hebrew or learn Hebrew in Israeli prisons. But at one point, actually, I don't know, you are very young, but before the first Intifada in 1987, most of the Palestinians, even though that Hebrew was not part of their education system, they learned Hebrew because of course there were checkpoints and there was occupation, but it was not, the segregation was not as bad as it is today. So daily life and encounter with the Israelis and the Palestinians developed that common language. But I don't know. And it used to be like that, yes, before 48, Arabs spoke Yiddish with their Jewish friends and that spoke Arabic. That's reality.
Okay.
Not to talk about Arab Jews. But now it's part of the segregation. But, for now it looks like more science fiction than anything else to talk about that possibility right now. But I completely suggest what the father says, that he's against any kind of separation. But now, I don't know.
Yes, there in the back.
Thank you. This was really interesting. I have a question. I read in Haaretz there was the right in the government are accusing the left of treason and treachery and, being infiltrators for Hamas, etc. My question is, do you see that Israeli culture is changing, is transforming to a more Iranian-esque type of culture where the left, sooner or later, is either going to be punished or is going to continue fleeing the country? Because I've been meeting a lot of left Israelis, open-minded, more humanist, peaceful, who are leaving, basically. And I'm seeing on the internet a lot of the culture becoming, people talking about enslavement of Palestinians, etc. The culture is, do you see the culture is actually changing into that kind of extremism where even Israelis who are left, who are not going to be able to survive or live in that environment? Thank you.
That's a good question. What do you think as Israeli?
Do you want me to answer this question?
Yes, please.
As Israeli, I can say that yes, the discourse in Israel, the public discourse, as we all know, has become much more polarized, and it's very hard to think different than the mainstream. Maybe I would say that the popular mainstream in Israel today, it would be more toward right wing. But I think that for many Israelis, there's no really, they cannot leave. Not everyone has the privilege or the ability just to leave the country. So, they just must stay there. And I know many Israelis, many of them are friends, my colleagues, my families, that do whatever they can in order to, like Kashua very much, to do whatever they can to have a better future and not to leave the discourse for the extremists in both sides, and the same goes also to the Israeli side. And my three nephews and niece also went to the bilingual school in Beersheba, learned Arabic, speak Arabic, the language of my grandparents from both sides. There are also, while there is this trend of more and more right-wing, there are also other trends which we also need to remember and shed light on.
Yes, I think, yes, thank you so much. That's a helpful answer. I think one of the definition of what is left in Israel, I'm not sure about that, especially the liberal Zionist left, right? So usually we agree that the Palestinian people need to have a state at one point. I don't know, very generally speaking. So that idea, how to be left and yes, what is left in Israel? Can you be Zionist and left wing? Can you support a Jewish state and be and not one democratic civic society and still can be left? So what is the definition of the left? Same also as here in the States, I don't know. But it's a very it's a complex, yes. What can we consider as the left in Israel? And there is no doubt that the Israeli society, they have, yes, just before the war, and continues probably, will continue maybe, because it's a very essential matter. Because sometimes it feels like the biggest definition of who is Israeli, meaning Jewish Israeli, is not Arab. And that equation cannot hold for long, right? So you know, so what I'm trying to say is the definition of Israel. Who can be a real citizen of Israel? Accepted. Real citizen meaning equal citizen, not real citizen, yes? It's not like the United States that you have a citizenship and then you're American. To be Israeli, the word Israeli means Jewish. So there is a lot of stages to be worked in the Israeli politics. For now, it looks like the people with power are the extremists. The people with power are the right wing. The settlers are very powerful, and it looks like they've been dictating the politics in Israel for decades now. But I don't know. I mean, in a naive way, because the left, or still the liberal Zionists even in Israel that I know, again, in a naive way, you always think about some hope. I truly cannot afford not having that hope. But I don't have a reason for that. We'll see.
Okay, last questions. Yes, please. Just a second, you're going to have the mic so everyone can hear.
I'm an avid reader of your everything you
Yeah,
write. Yeah. And I just read with my students your farewell column in Haaretz. And when you decided that being here and writing, keep on writing, that just not work well together for you. And you say that basically the main idea behind or the main goal behind your writing of the column was to find the limits of expression of someone like you writing in Hebrew in Israel. And I never thought about it like this. I never saw that you were, trying to break any barrier, because I just enjoy. I thought you did a magnificent job. So my question is, if that really was your intention, what is your conclusion? I mean, did you manage to find a limit of expressions, of someone like you, or how far can you go expressing your opinions in what you write in madrasa and everything else, or there is no conclusion on your part?
If there are limits, I'm aware of the fact that there are limits before I started. Some I would argue it's self-censoring myself based on what I imagine the audience. Sometimes maybe I will dare more for the imagined reader of Haaretz, supposedly liberal left-wing Israeli. So maybe I can push the limits a little bit further. But when it comes to commercial TV, I knew very well that. I mean, it's not like I try to market some lectures against the occupation and primetime commercial TV, not at all. But it's a negotiation. At least when I teach my students classes in political satire, I still emphasize that the cultural field is a very important field for struggles between different ideologies, different agendas, and different classes and different thoughts. So I relate to my writing and writing for TV as such. It is always לבחון את הגבולות, how you say, testing the boundaries. Yeah. Yes, and at one point when we talk about accusation of the language, at one point I realized even here, I don't know what's the next novel, if at all, about the language and identity. I write with an Arabic accent. My Hebrew is challenging the Hebrew by itself. Some of the readers will say it's not even Hebrew. Yes, I mean some Israeli readers. So it's not. It's challenging the Hebrew. The idea that the Hebrew is only for Israelis. Yes, a little bit of challenge, and they think that there is no point to write in a language that you completely fully understand. Don't write if you know that language so good. What's the point? So for me, it's part of the writing, finding not in English yet, but so it's a struggle to find the right words for me, or the rhythm or the right sentences. But I always thought how much I censor myself automatically, consciously, and how much it's unconscious censorship. So yes, it's always dynamic. It's not like I found the limits. I'm still pushing. Yes, we'll see. I don't know.
Said Kashua, thank you so much.